the Holy Spirit formed a protective shield around me. Oh, wait a minute. I'm an archangel. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Can you fire metal feathers?
Out of my colon, yes. Good evening, and welcome to the Church of Awesome.
The church to end all churches.
Glad you could be at our services today. I am the Archangel Michael. Yeah. Presiding, we have Demi-Pope Chris. And joining us today will also be Cardinal Imam Spencer, son of Hagar. Peace be upon him. And we also have Bill. Let's talk psychology for a moment. We have our resident expert here in psychology, the son of Hagar himself.
Expert, that's a good one. Yes, I do have a degree from one of those, diploma mills. University of California something or other.
It's actually one we've heard of before. Old UCLA.
Yes, good old UCLA.
So when everyone thinks psychology, their first vision is Freud.
Oh, of course.
That he is like the poster boy of psychology, which is funny because like most everything he said was wrong, like dead wrong, right?
Pretty much everything, yes. Yes.
I mean, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but I already fucking knew that.
But sometimes a pipe is not a pipe.
Yes. Quite. Yes, Freud gave us two things of value. The first being the concept of talk therapy. Although psychoanalysis, which you can still get done today in the Freud tradition, complete with that awkward fucking couch that everybody knows what it looks like.
They find your thetans, right? Is that? Oh no, sorry, that's Scientology. They audit you. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry, back to Freud.
No, it's midichlorians. Get it right.
Yeah.
Like, no, we said Freud, not Freud.
Those are synonyms.
But yes, Freud's whole free association and all this subconscious mind bullshit. I mean,
well, to be fair, don't we process a lot more subconsciously than than we realize?
Well, yes. Mostly it's stuff like telling our heart to keep beating, or
Well, that's autonomic. That's going to happen anyway. Our heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be considered subconscious. You don't think about it consciously.
Because it's subconscious.
I guess so. I sort of think of that as something like the computer's on, it's running the fans. It's sort of something that doesn't have to be commanded to do. It's just sort of part of it being on.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, a computer does have to be commanded.
Well, yes, once you hit the power button, that's
That's most of what our old brain does. It regulates stuff, everything from blood sugar level, blood metabolism,
body temperature to the extent possible.
Yeah.
Oxygen levels, salt levels.
Yeah. But like one of the examples that when people talk about intuition, here we go, we'll get religious on you. People have special senses and intuition. And like, okay, well, there's, say if you know a guy who's been a firefighter for 30 years and he's been a chief for a long time, he's probably going to sense things that us normal folk wouldn't, like if a fire's about to break out. Like I've seen this set of circumstances happen a bunch of times and maybe I don't notice it, but the air has dropped a couple degrees really fast, or there's a smell that's just like that. I wouldn't call that intuition. I would call that
experience.
That's experience. A subconscious recall of information based on previous experience. Yeah. Intuition is utter bullshit.
It's not.
There's no sixth sense
necessarily
in that sense.
Subconscious, right? I mean, if you think about like walking, you don't have to think about every step you take, right? Because your nervous system creates shortcuts. And basically you give it a master command and it does the rest of the process for you. And so kind of what's going on with a lot of people that are experienced with a lot of things like that, like a firefighter is really experienced with reading fires or whatever, and they can walk into a room that's been burned out and tell you exactly where the fire started and what caused it, all this stuff. That's just experience. The more experience you get with anything, you're going to be able to read the clues because you know what to look for. That's not necessarily subconscious or.
I think a better example that might be like how we can tell sometimes if someone's lying.
That's because
you pick up on a lot of cues that you don't specifically say, oh, he did this and this and this and this. You say, I think he's lying because it just seemed like he was lying. Mm-hmm. So it's like your brain kind of puts those things together. It doesn't label them or number them or anything like that. It just conveys the general feeling of, I feel like this guy's lying.
We actually pay a lot more attention to how people say things than what they actually say a lot of times. And how they're acting when they say it, which is generally, the more you do that, the better you are at detecting bullshit. Or
just communicating.
Yes. I mean, the vast majority of how we communicate is nonverbal, except in the podcast world. And even then, you have inflection and tone of voice. It's so much more than the words you say.
Purple monkey dishwasher.
That's right.
You said not speech therapy.
Talk therapy.
Talk therapy.
Yes.
Speech therapy. So I stopped stuttering. Is that basically sitting down and talking about things? Just the idea of sitting on a couch or reclining on a couch, is that Freudian? That seems like something we would have figured out a long time ago.
Surprisingly, no. I mean, before Freud, nobody really paid attention to mental health. Mental health disorders were generally thought of as things like being possessed by the devil. And so...
humor imbalances or something.
Exactly. They had no fucking clue what was going on or how to deal with them. Freud was the first one that basically said, hey, let's sit down and talk about this and get to the root of the problem.
Let's talk to the demon.
Yeah.
You've got
I would like to speak to Sally now. Did he do that? Or?
No, he wasn't inside the actor's studio.
Okay.
I don't know. It would depend on how many people with multiple personality disorder he dealt with. Because sometimes you do that.
So the iconic image of someone laying on a couch and some guy in a chair next to him, that was Freud that started that?
Yeah. So in the Freudian style, there's actually very specific alignment of the furniture. Because the therapist has to be pointed away from the patient, because the therapist is only to be listening to what the patient says and getting no cues from anything else that the patient does. So the patient would be lying on this really awkward couch that isn't all that comfortable. And the therapist would go in and sit in his chair, or her chair nowadays, but back then it would have been just guys, because, pretty misogynistic culture back then. And your first session, the therapist would just sit and wait for the patient to say something. And just chill out. If you spent your whole hour and didn't say anything, that was your hour. Go home. Come back next week. Another $180 or whatever they're charging you per hour.
That seems weird that they wouldn't. I mean, we were just talking about nonverbal communication now. There's so much is contained in it that they would just ignore that.
Well, that's one of the big areas where Freud got everything wrong. He was so intent on just figuring out what was going on in this person's head by what they said. He wouldn't initiate any conversation. The other person had to start it because he didn't want to plant anything in their brains or
Well, that makes sense. He doesn't want to contaminate the person.
Yeah, but also you need to kind of steer where you want to go.
Yes.
If they just start talking about, I saw this awesome baseball game the other day, and it was,
Yeah.
And I got abducted by an alien, and he made me beer. Yeah, if it's nonsense.
To some degree, that does tell you something about the person. It's like, that's the things that, unprompted, they'll start talking about. That's what's in their mind right now.
But it helps if they can say, I have this really bad problem with anxiety right now. Or, I've been really depressed lately. It helps if you can get that kind of information up front so you know what you're dealing with.
Well, and you can kind of start to probe. You can say, like, what do you define this as? Like, what do you think this is? When do you feel it? How do you feel specifically? Get the person to really dig into their own problem. And that's kind of what they do now, right?
Yeah.
But you say that he wasn't doing that then?
No, it was entirely the patient kind of did their own thing, and it went wherever the patient took it. The other thing was all of his conclusions on what everything meant weren't based on any kind of scientific method. He said, well, if you dream of frogs on a Wednesday, you're gay, or whatever, just crazy.
What day is it today?
I don't even know. It's now. But he didn't use any scientific method. All of his patients were upper middle class to wealthy white women. Those were the only people he dealt with.
Sampling error.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
again, he wasn't doing science. I don't
No.
know. Was he operating under the assumption that did he think he was doing science?
I don't know. I mean, what was scientific method really at that point?
I think he just thought he was kind of probing the human mind. It's just
Yes.
kind of, just
But he
taking
was
samples.
making vast generalizations about the entire population based on an incredibly small, incredibly skewed sample set.
Yeah. So he was making the hypotheses. He just wasn't testing them. He was just postulating
Basically,
things and
yes.
just letting them stand there.
Yes, he
Which
was
is
just
science speak for
throwing-
making shit up.
Well, I don't know, because
Yes.
there's something to be said. We need these hypotheses to test, and he didn't know how to test them. He wasn't a scientist. So,
And
if he had workable hypotheses that we were able to test, and
And
prove
that's
all of them wrong.
And that's what brings me to the second good thing about Freud is that he got people interested in the human mind as an organ, as something that malfunctions. The same way you would look at your heart or your liver or your kidneys or a muscle. It's an organ that when it's functioning properly works, and when it messes up, it has problems. Before that, if you had a problem with your mind, what did you do?
Lobotomy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did that all the way up into the 50s, but
Were they doing lobotomy? Was that post Freud? The whole
Oh, yeah.
lobotomy thing?
Did you
well,
see One Flew Over the
I mean-
Cuckoo's Nest?
No, but I mean, like,
lobotomy
was there
started
Yeah, did that start after Freud?
centuries before Freud.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Well, I mean, they were
very
doing like
crude,
trepanning and stuff
yes,
like that. But, like,
very crude
smashing people with a
versions.
rock. But
Yeah,
or
it was-
drilling their head with an obsidian blade or something.
Yeah, I mean, didn't the Egyptians, when they mummified, they just sort of mashed the brain up to a paste and let it drip out the nose? Like, they never took the brain seriously, but every other organ got its own canopic jar. So it's like, that to me...
And I bet it was just because it would be hard to get out in one piece.
I mean, I don't know. None of the sons of Horus gave a shit about the brain, apparently.
I'm just
what I
saying
got.
that all probably comes from the fact that the only way to get it out was to
Oh.
smash it up into oatmeal and let it drool out.
Are you telling me that the sons of Horus aren't real?
Now, I hate to break this to you. I'm sorry you had to find out this way.
Damn it! I came to church to build my faith. Even the Church of Us.
Yes. We will build your faith in science.
Although, if you have science, you don't need faith, because
right.
faith, the fundamental difference is, this is something I think very many people don't understand, is that if you have facts and evidence, you don't need faith anymore, because faith is believing in the absence of evidence or in spite of evidence. That is the definition of what faith
In
is.
fact, as a scientist, you specifically seek to eliminate faith.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have knowledge.
Well, and just as a human being, I seek to eliminate faith. Faith is not a good thing.
It is not. It is not a virtue. But, it takes just as much faith to be an atheist as it does a Christian. What do you have to say to that, huh?
I'm just gonna get out of here right now.
As I say, this
Yeah,
chalice
hold on
of...
a second while I get my gun.
Yeah, this chalice of whiskey I have has more operating brain cells than you. Yeah,
By that, you mean your leftover McDonald's cup?
that is what I meant by chalice. This is my McChalice.
McChalice.
So when Freud was doing his stuff, was there a religious backlash to that? Did people think that wasn't supposed to be done? They're like, no, we know it's demons. Why are you talking to the demons?
There may have been. It's not widely publicized.
Because now you've got the whole Scientology versus psychology thing, that Scientologists hate psychology. I mean, there's a museum
course
in
they
LA of it's competition.
Well, it's because Hubbard was a failed psychologist, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he was a science...
and failed everything else.
Science
Yeah,
fiction writer.
he was a science fiction writer, and then what was it? That first book, Dianetics, right? Where he basically wanted to be the next Freud, but what you're saying was
And he
total.
was, because he was wrong about everything.
Yeah, I said it was bad shit.
Yeah.
No one agreed with him.
He had everything right except for the popular part.
But back to the making the patient initiate the conversation. To me, that makes sense because people aren't going to get help until they want it, right? Like, I mean, in any normal addiction scenario, if you don't want to go into rehab, you're going to flunk out of rehab every time, right? It seems to me it makes sense to have the other person initiate the.
Well, they're the ones that signed up to come to your therapy.
That's a good point. But
Well, unless they were brought there by someone else.
but they always say the cliche is the first step to solving a problem is admitting that you have a problem. Is that from AA or something, or is that Freud?
But I mean, AA to me.
So, yeah, I mean, sometimes it is difficult just going what's actually getting like, 'cause sometimes saying it is kind of what makes you realize consciously more so what your problem is.
What you got to remember is it's not like the therapist is just going in and going like, well, so what's wrong with you?
What's your problem?
I mean, these are people that have doctorates. You know, they've been to at least 10 years of school. I mean, a bachelor's in the U.S., a bachelor's degree is 4 years. A PhD in psychology for clinical work's about 5. Plus, you have to do a year internship. You have to do continuing study throughout your career. So many hours per year. You know, they're well trained in how to ask questions, how to probe people, and there's been a lot of research done on what questions to ask and what, you know, how you bring stuff up in a way that you're going to get unbiased results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because otherwise, if you're just watching them meander, it's going to take them forever to get anywhere, right?
Yeah, if ever.
You have to kind of lead them along.
Yeah. And nowadays, there are very specific guided courses to different disorders. You know, if somebody has, a phobia, you know, they can go through a systematic desensitization program where they're going to, say you're afraid of spiders. First, they'll show you a picture of a spider. And then they'll put a spider somewhere way across the room. And then they'll put a spider closer to you. And then a big spider. And then at the end, you've got tarantulas crawling on you. And you're not afraid of them anymore.
Does that work?
Quite well, yeah. When done properly by a trained technician. I wouldn't recommend doing it to your, brother or somebody. But
what about the people who are like afraid of broccoli? Like, does that same shit
that's
work?
just weird. No.
I mean, I wish I could say I made that up, but I didn't.
No, I mean,
I think you did.
You can look at. There's a funny name for it.
There probably is, because there's a name for everything.
And there's banana phobia. It's not called banana phobia, but it's.
Oh, please tell me it is.
Yeah, there's like triskaidekaphobia or whatever.
No, I think banana phobia is actually the fear of penis. I don't know.
Or the fear of innuendo.
Or Ray Comfort.
Yeah. It's the atheist nightmare.
Anywho, the point is, these methods have been tested scientifically through unbiased scientific research to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Can you give us an example? Let's say cause of an oral fixation, and how do they disprove that?
Well, so Freud had his stages of development. If I can remember back that far, the oral phase was, I think, the first one after you're born, and then it's followed by the anal phase, and I think there's a phallic phase, and I can't remember what the other one is. But, and he claimed that if you got stuck in one of these phases of development, then you would have a fixation on that thing. So somebody stuck in an anal fixation is obsessed with their butthole, and so they have problems pooping, or they, whatever. They like taking it in the butt. I don't know. Or if they have an oral fixation, maybe they're,
always eating,
ridiculous gum chewers, or, always eating, or smokers. That's going to lead to this. And basically, there's just no evidence to support it. As far as the specific studies that they've done, I don't have my books in front of me, so I can't really look it up.
Yeah, because I mean, that would be very easy to test, because you can say, like, okay, we've got a population of people that are, gum chewers. Yeah. And then you interview them about things that would get...
Did they have traumatic experiences during the first year of their life, or whatever?
Well, I can tell you, I chew gum a lot because my mouth is always really dry. And the reason my mouth's so dry because I have no...
You have sinus problems?
Yeah, I have horrible sinus problems. Like, I can never breathe out of my nose. I'm always breathing out of my mouth, and it's all dry. Breather. I'm a mouth breather. I admit it. And so I'm always drinking something or chewing gum. And it's like, does that mean my dad walked into me while I was wanking off when I was 5 years old? Or like, no, I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
Wow, you started early. It took me at least till 6 or 7. No, And the funny thing about the oral stage is it's literally like the first year of life or the first 9 months, something like that. I can't
What was it
remember
called?
the cutoff.
Imprinting? Your first instinct when you're born is to go to the nipple. What's that called? Imprinting, implanting. There's a fucking term for
There's
it.
a name for it. It's a reflex, really.
Yeah, it's something that's innate in mammals.
It's actually, it manifests itself in if you take a newborn and you rub their cheek with like the back of your finger or something.
Immediately turn.
They will turn their head towards it, which a lot of parents have this problem. They're like, "Hey, look over here," and they try and push the kid's face, and the kid looks the other way because they're trying to go towards the stimulation of like, "Hey, there's this boob in my face. I'm gonna suck on it."
Yeah. Now,
For some of us, that never goes away.
Yeah, you're stuck in the oral phase, aren't you?
Some people might say that.
Yeah. You just go worth it. Now it is time for communing with the spirits.
I am communing with the Lafroig 10-year Isla single malt Scotch whiskey. Nice, beautiful, smoky peaty whiskey. I'm gonna add a little bit of water into this to mellow it out a little bit. It's got a very sweet and smoky, but also kind of a briny taste to it. Very, very delicious.
All right. This afternoon or evening or morning, whenever you're listening to this, I'm communing.
It's always now when you're listening to this.
Yes. Now I am communing with the Springbank 10-year-old. It's a Campbelltown single malt Scotch whiskey.
Are we all working on
Rather
some variation
tasty.
of whiskey?
Yes, we are.
Anyway, Campbelltown is like the old school distillation hub of Scotland. It's pretty quiet nowadays, but this is quite a tasty malt.
It's last man standing of the Campbelltown.
That's
crew.
right, and for a very good reason. No artificial coloring, non-chill filtered, all that good stuff. And quite tasty. Good balance of peat. It's 2.5 times distilled, as they call it. They even use the old direct fired still, which kind of supposedly gives it more flavor of some kind. Supposed to maybe caramelize the sugars left in the wash when they get to the first distiller.
I'm communing with was Evan Williams Tennessee whiskey and Coke inside my McDonald's cup.
It's bourbon.
It's bourbon.
Okay. The important thing is that it's whiskey. Yeah, it's mixed.
It'll get you drunk.
It's Evan Williams and McDonald's Coke.
Don't say that in Kentucky or Tennessee. You'll probably be okay.
Now, what is up with like the fact that we don't really breastfeed anymore? I mean, that's a horrible idea to replace human milk with bovine milk and think that that's going to work okay for our kids. Now we're kind of getting scientific on this one.
Well, I mean, you just kind of committed the naturalistic fallacy, though.
Which is, assuming that natural is better.
Yeah, I mean, it may be the case.
It's the wrong animal.
But to just assume that it is, just because it's the natural the way that it's always been done. I mean, for example, if you've got a mother who has something harmful in her circulatory system, some sort of medication, like that, then she can't breastfeed the kid and she has to use formula, which, the formula is designed to be an adequate replacement. Whether it is or not is completely, up for
Generally,
debate.
what I've seen, the biggest problem with it is a lack of. It tends to suppress immune function
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say it doesn't have those immunoantibodies
yes,
from the mother.
Yes.
So it's same thing with C-sections have that same problem.
Or explain.
That if the newborn kid isn't getting exposed to the immunes, what are those called? Antigens. I think that's what they're called. Basically all of the antibodies that the immune system is
antigenobodies. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's just make up a lot of words.
Yeah. We'll just say genitals for short.
So if if you don't get exposed to those, then you don't get challenges to your immune system, and you don't have the antigens to fight.
How does getting pulled out cesarean section bypass getting genitals. I mean, antibodies.
It's just too sterile, you know. You're not getting passed through, areas where.
What are you licking the sides of the wall on your way out? I don't understand.
Well, if you've ever seen childbirth, it's rather messy.
Oh yeah.
But when you do it, if you do it surgically, then you bypass a lot of that mess. So that mess actually has a purpose.
Didn't they used to give birth standing up and letting gravity kind of do the work?
Squatting. There's all kinds of.
I mean, I'm assuming the baby comes out at quite a velocity where if the person isn't a good catch, then you have
fumble. Is that where the term bouncing baby boy comes from?
I would like to think so. Yes. But that was good. You spotted a fallacy right out there. Didn't even think about that. But
no, the problem that tends to come with giving kids cow milk is that, particularly if you pasteurize it, the lactose becomes a problem because we have a hard time breaking it down. Whereas breast milk has the enzymes already in it to break down all the sugars that are in there that we can't break down on our own. So is the jury still out on formula and how effective it is? I mean, it's been around for a couple decades, effective.
Right?
I mean, you can raise a kid wholly on formula. They'll grow up. It won't kill them.
There's just known problems with it.
They tend to have weak immune
weak
systems.
immune function, and there's the whole lactose problem.
Mm-hmm.
So now I was thinking the other day, not related to at all what we're talking about.
It's all right.
About
this podcast is full of left turns.
And that's why we're the best.
That's right.
Because of advances in science, we're living twice, 3 times, sometimes even 4 times as long as our ancestors did. And I think that's pretty cool. It kind of makes me feel like I've already won the lottery. I mean, I won the lottery by the fact that I was born at all, the fact of the right sperm and egg coming together and coming to term and making it all the way out and growing up and surviving into adulthood. I mean, that's a feat that's pretty impressive considering, in the context of the entire
it's
human race.
statistically not very likely.
Yeah.
Our existence is very statistical.
You could have been wanked into a tissue.
Exactly. I feel pretty good. I've had a pretty good run so far, and I'm approaching about the 3rd waypoint maybe, because normally I'd be dead in a couple years, to a couple 100 years ago, but now it's I might have to make it to 70, and it's interesting because I was watching a thing on marriage, and it's we're not supposed to be married this long. We're supposed to be married and then dead, and then that's why there's so many people getting divorced after 30, 40, 50 years, because we weren't meant to be married this long. And doesn't that kind of imply that we were meant to do anything,
Well, yes, that's presupposing that we were meant to be married to begin with.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Or meant to anything, because we weren't created, we happened. And it's and then after this, can you imagine living 80 years and then eternity? I'm totally fine with the concept of just that's it. Being, I'm done. I had a good
stage left.
I've already had a good time so far. Life is too much fun. It's and it's a lot more fun now that I can actually observe things, learn things, and not be told stupid, ridiculous nonsense.
Yeah.
It's life is pretty good actually.
Yeah, and we won't get killed or brutally maimed for not following the status quo.
Yeah, and I like not being burned at the stake. Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, not being allowed to be curious about things.
That's right.
Yeah. What are you gonna do in the eternities that will not eventually be damnation? It's gonna them getting
Yeah, I'm I can't stay interested in anything for a long period of time.
Yeah. Could you imagine, Christian heaven? Think about it. An eternity of singing in your church choir. Oofa.
Do people ever ask you, aren't you depressed because you don't believe in God now? Or I'm no.
Well, I remember when I first, I would explain it to people when I was first more outwardly atheist, and they're like, "Isn't that depressing?" And I'm like, "Well, that's really not the point."
It's depressing, therefore it's true.
Yeah, isn't it much more pleasant to believe a lie? Well, probably, but I think I'd rather not.
Yeah,
and for the record, I was much more depressed when I was forced to go to church every Sunday than I am now.
It's true that.
Yeah, it's really nothing more depressing than to think that you are constantly falling short and constantly disappointing.
And constantly being watched.
could live up to 80 years. Yeah, it's funny because, like, with the advances of science, like, we don't know what to do with old people. That's
right.
like, we're probably learning a bunch of things about the human body that we didn't really learn before because no one lived this long. Like, well, it turns out once you go past 65,
Methuselah was 900 and something.
Well, I mean, that's why the like cancer epidemic. It's just like, well, it's just eventually cell damage catches up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have cancerous cells in our body at all times.
Yeah.
And normally they take care of themselves. They destroy their own cell walls and get consumed by other cells for what proteins left and stuff.
Well, they get outcompeted.
And there's literally a like self-destruct mechanism in our cells that if they start functioning improperly, they will destroy themselves. And cancer cells just don't do that.
Yeah.
And so they keep replacing themselves and infecting nearby cells and causing them to misbehave. And normally our body, with its amazing immune function, takes care of these cells.
It kind of keeps it in check.
And as we get older and our immune function starts to fail, we have a harder time keeping up with these cancers.
They just become more numerous because that's just random mutations can cause that, and you just accumulate random mutations the longer you're around.
Yeah.
And we're exposed to background radiation all the time. Which
Like our cell phones.
Yeah, I just blew up at the gas station the other day.
True story.
But the Holy Spirit formed a protective shield around me. Oh, wait a minute. I'm an archangel. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Can you fire metal feathers and
Out of my colon, yes.
Is that where your wings are?
What are you eating? You might want to lay off the iron.
Is that what the special and special K is for?
So is it true that Captain Crunch is going the way of the dodo?
What I heard is that they're just not going to advertise it anymore. So it's still available, but I think they're like, I think we've reached market saturation with advertising. People know what it is, and we'll get it.
Well, but the same thing is true of Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, and everything else I've ever heard of.
Yeah, I think that the breakfast market is just different.
No, what I think it is my roommate's real into sports, and as soon as I said, I hear they're taking down Captain Crunch, like they're decommissioning the captain, and he said, such and such name, I forget what it was, and it said it was some famous athlete who said that he lost 30 pounds just by not eating Captain Crunch anymore. And like he said that grew wings and basically was the demise of Captain Crunch.
So how much Captain Crunch do you have to eat? And how do your gums not end up like a bloody mess eating that much?
I wonder if he's built up calluses on the roof of his mouth.
Probably.
I mean, there's no nutritional value whatsoever.
It's like eating candy-coated glass.
Brushing your teeth with one of those barbecue cleaners.
Yes, yeah. So tasty, though.
Yeah, I got a
Especially the crunch berries. Ooh.
Yeah, I am hopelessly addicted to crunch berries.
I hate breakfast cereals. I hate them all.
But I got
That's
a couple.
my next fatwa.
I got a couple of.
Don't get away.
I got a couple.
Stay tuned for next week's episode.
Yeah, I got a couple of boxes of Captain Crunch to cry over to say my goodbyes. I'll say one more, "Oh Captain, my Captain," and then a couple Hail Marys and yeah. Well, like they better keep the imitations at least the imitations.
Well, of course they'll keep.
I can't.
If the
I'm serious. I have a problem.
Away,
I have to. I might have to get psychoanalyzed.
The first step is to admit that you have a problem. You go to an analropist.
Yeah.
Yes. Go to a support group for it.
Yeah.
Crunchaholics Anonymous.
Life after.
CA.
I'm addicted to Crunchahol.
Life after.
Yeah,
Captain
does that
Crunch.
bug anybody else? I'm a workaholic. I'm addicted.
You should lay off the workaholic.
I'm addicted to workahol. How do I get some of that? I mean,
stop eating all this chocohol as well.
yes.
And stop going to the shopahol.
Yes. But all this alk I've been drinking is great.
So can you get pretty much addicted to anything you want? It seems like any rewarding behavior can be abused, right?
Anything. I mean, right, there are two types of addictions. You have your physical addiction and your psychological addiction. Mm-hmm. Some substances are physically addictive, such as heroin or, nicotine.
Or Captain Crunch.
No, Captain Crunch is not. Well, there might be MSG in that. MSG has some
As abuse potential.
vaguely very small.
It's a Schedule 1.
Physical.
But also, I mean, the psychological addictions where it's releasing the dopamine kind of stuff. That's chemical as well, really.
Yeah, but
you're not taking the dopamine directly, but it's
That's a manifestation of a psychological.
The difference is the physical addiction is that the removal of that chemical from your body causes a withdrawal
symptoms,
which causes you to desire more of that substance, right? So in a psychological addiction, you're maybe addicted to the flavor or addicted to the feeling it gives you, but it's not the substance. It's not the removal of the substance itself. It's the deprivation of the
behavior
associations with it or anything like that. You can get psychologically addicted to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So when people go, "Oh, pot's not addictive," yeah, neither's chocolate, neither's alcohol, really.
Yeah.
Well, you do have some withdrawal symptoms, but in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty low on the list of chemical dependencies.
Mm-hmm. It's more the psychological addiction.
Yes, the psychological addiction is far stronger than the physical. For instance, with nicotine, it takes about a week for nicotine to leave your system completely. Once the nicotine is completely out of your system, the physical addiction is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Your body no longer craves it. It's when it has less of it than it wants, but still has some of it, that's when the physical addiction kicks in. Because you get used to this level of the substance, and when the substance starts to wane, you want more of it. Once it's gone, the physical addiction goes away. Mm-hmm. The psychological addiction to cigarettes is way stronger than any physical addiction.
What about things like heroin? Is that the same kind of thing?
Yeah, heroin is really, really physically addictive.
Mm-hmm. But is it the same thing that you make it past a certain time, and then the physical addiction is...
Yeah, I mean, physical addictions go away generally faster than psychological addictions. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of overgeneralizing there. Crack cocaine is supposed to be the most physically addictive substance that we know of. That one might last longer than the psychological addiction, but there's still a psychological addiction there.
Yeah. It's really the double whammy that gets you.
Yep.
Now let us begin the fatwas of the week. The first fatwa of the week will be by me, the Archangel Michael. Yeah. It is against the Arc Music Factory. Now, if people aren't familiar with this abomination of music, I will explain it to you. You've perhaps heard of the song Friday by, I believe her name is Rebecca Black. Now, basically,
everyone's heard that.
Yeah, for those of you who don't have internet and have had your head literally in the sand for the past 2 weeks, here's basically the rough backstory. Some girl had parents that had about $2,000 of disposable income that they threw at this place called the Arc Music Factory, where they basically make your dreams come true. It's where they take girls who really want to be pop star princesses or whatever, and they'll write a song, they'll record the song, they'll let you sing it, they'll auto-tune the living fuck out of your voice. Then they even make a shitty little music video. I mean, the Friday one is just the best example of everything is wrong with the industry, and it's been described as a parody of itself. It's basically like an accidental parody on the current music industry, or the pop music industry, that is. And it's getting mocked heavily, and rightfully so, because it is a terrible, terrible song. And the girls, and it's not like she's tone deaf, because I've seen other videos of her where she can actually sing, but it's like the Friday, Friday. It's like, that's the best take you got out of it? I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know if they had okay, we got 6 minutes just to go and lay down the vocals. I mean, they're very sophisticated vocals, like Sunday comes afterwards, and gotta have my bowl, gotta have cereal, and riding in the front seat.
Gotta go down to the bus stop, gotta wait for the bus.
I see my friends, and it's like, and it's kind of amusing to me to see how they have, they're teaching her to basically do all the, closing your eyes and moving.
Pretend like you're actually feeling something.
Yeah, and it's like, there is absolutely no substance to this. There is teenage angst, I'm sure, because she's a teenage girl, but whatever. But it's like, when people are singing, a good artist, say Michael Jackson or anyone, where they're singing about something, maybe a breakup, maybe some tragedy or something. There's something actually emotionally engaging, something that's actually happening.
I was going to say Music Factory is a pretty apt description of what it is.
I have to say, though, they do hit the hard-hitting issues of the day facing modern teenagers, such as, are you going to sit in the front seat or the back seat?
The classic teenage conundrum.
It is.
You know.
Yeah, that's really metaphorical, because aren't we all looking for a place to sit?
It's everyone's making fun of it, how crappy it is, but I'm not hearing enough about basically what I'm saying is that like this. It deserves to be mocked. You know, I saw this little thing where little Jessica was being interviewed by some bitch from a morning show, and like, how does it make you feel when people say, "I hope you cut yourself" or whatever? And like, it's just a sub. It deserves to be mocked, and it should be paraded around and say, "Look, this is a great bad example. Here's what you're doing," because you can make almost anything sound almost like music. I mean, auto-tune the
this
news.
Is actually a wake-up call to some people, because you can compare those lyrics with any Black Eyed Peas song.
Oh my God, they're horrible.
You know, like, for some reason, one is seen as popular and winning awards, and the other one we're making fun of. But why? They're the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because people in general think that a young teenage girl is an easier target than a group of adults will say, and
I just think it's time to say, the Emperor has no clothes.
I couldn't agree more.
So my fatwa is on Brian Fisher from he's the director of issues analysis for the social conservative group, the American Family Association. He was actually quoted as saying, now this is when it comes to the First Amendment as it applies to Islam. He says, Islam has no fundamental First Amendment claims, for the simple reason that it was not written to protect the religion of Islam. The First Amendment was written by the founders to protect the free exercise of Christianity. They were making no effort to give special protection to Islam. Quite the contrary. So yeah, amazing douchebagginess.
Wow.
Is he serious?
Did he actually read the First Amendment before he said this?
One would have to think so, because it's not that long, but it's just like, wow, it would be difficult for you to be more wrong.
Yeah, it's almost an art how you could get so much wrong in a short period of time. How you can understand so little about an already short.
Yeah. That's misunderstanding condensed down to an art form.
The entire purpose is to separate government from religion itself. I mean, it's good Lord. I mean, I'd have to bring out Bill of Rights 101 on this asshole.
Well, and that's kind of an extreme example, but there are a lot of people that have been saying stuff like that about the First Amendment, that it's, the whole resurgence into this is a Christian nation sentiment that's kind of come back.
Yeah, they just ignore that whole Novus Ordo Secularum shit on the dollar bill.
Yeah, that's just astounding to me. That's some potent ignorance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, if you think that it's a Christian nation, I mean, did you read almost anything that the Founding Fathers said? I mean, very, very anti-religious and definitely anti-Christian. Wow.
Yeah,
that's all I can say.
I mean, the whole thing was basically the demolition of power structures. It was supposed to be, a ground-up way of organization, that you have the people in charge because the power is distributed amongst a whole lot of people. So anything that's top down, they were automatically critical of.
Yeah, Federalists versus anti-Federalists. Yeah, that's. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, they took that a little bit too far with the Articles of Confederation. They're basically the first draft of the Constitution where they had no real centralized government, and nothing ever got done, and it collapsed in on itself. That's why they had the Constitutional Convention. That's when the actual Constitution came out. It was like a decade later. So. Yeah,
but I mean, even that compared to now, we're so much more top down than we were back then.
Yeah, certainly after Bush.
Like they started with Eisenhower.
Lincoln, really.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was pretty much the end of states' rights.
Yeah.
Although I'm not going to say that what he stood for was.
Yeah. So what? The South had a lot of good points. It's hard to defend that because you're like, well, they just kind of got grouped in with the whole. It's like, well, it would be a good argument if you weren't using it to defend slavery.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Hey, to use that argument maybe to defend legalizing pot or something like that.
or something useful. Let's say, where does it say specifically separation of church and state in the Constitution? Like, well, it doesn't say that those exact words did not happen, but what it does say is that Congress shall make no law regarding, and then it talks about the establishment of religion. Yeah. Good Lord. I don't know, you say the right code words for you to understand it, we're going to be here all day.
Yeah, so it's like, basically he's saying, Muslims can't talk. Shut up, Muslims.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not happy about the special treatment that Muslims get. Like on Google, you were pointing out how you could say Christianity is, and then bullshit is the next, and the auto complete in the search engine. Then you type in Muslim or Islam is, and it's blank because we're afraid of offending people.
Well, there's certain things that they just. I mean, you can see why they do that. If people are choosing to self-censor out of fear, and I think that's if people are doing that to you, that's a worse insult than calling you anything. I'd rather have someone, call me an asshole to my face than to, every time I walk up, they stop talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you completely. I would much rather have someone tell me, like, because either, if you have a problem with me, you're either going to tell me something that's useful, maybe you're right, and then I'll learn something and change. Or you're an idiot, and I'll go, okay, well, I'll take it with a grain of salt, or you're a moron and have no bearing on my real life, but I would much rather hear it than having the room fall silent as you walk in.
Well, because then all that tells you is that, they're saying all sorts of stuff behind your back.
Yeah.
Which,
It's chicken shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to declare jihad today on the sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddle from McDonald's. Like all other McDonald's food, it is a salt bomb waiting to blow out your intestinal tract. However, this thing is so damn tasty, I can't stay away from it. I have to physically drive a different way to work most mornings to refrain from buying one on the way in. It should be illegal.
They do seem to have, like, McDonald's food doesn't taste like food. It tastes like it was engineered to be perfect taste and texture.
Yes.
But it doesn't seem like it's a natural occurring kind of thing.
Well, somehow they got syrup in the little pancake bun.
Yeah.
What?
But it doesn't get sticky on your hands. Yeah. I don't get it.
Well, because I don't think it's not syrup like maple syrup.
I'm sure it's not.
I'm sure there's nothing sugar infused.
I'm sure there's nothing remotely maple involved.
Well, I think they probably just put some dye on it to look like
a lot of high fructose corn syrup.
Or it's just the whole thing is just made of sugary, salty.
Yes.
You said it's dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
And also, it has no First Amendment rights.
No, it doesn't.
We'd like to thank you for joining us this week, and now we will leave you with the gift of tongues.
Ich har net af mit oje, jeg sa dig I rudis, da var meget hodje, du var hoj, dat var en kreen skedensel, det sa dit ansicht.
It's not like we're still breastfeeding. Now it's purely recreational.
Son, I just wanted to fuck something, so... And your father came along.
Baby. Look at pornography.
The comments made by the hosts and other participants are the opinions of the individuals and not those of any corporate entity. All data and information provided in this program is for informational purposes only. The Church of Awesome makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, currentness, suitability, or validity of any information in this program and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, or delays in this information or any losses, injuries, or damages arising from its display or use. All information is provided on an as-is basis. If you like what you've heard in today's sermon, come visit us at churchofawesome.com or follow us on Twitter at COA Podcast.